our next presentation, well, our last presentation for today comes from Professor DK Panda from The Ohio State University. DK, thank you for waking up early this morning. How are you?
Yeah, good, very, very good morning to all of you from this side. Okay. So thanks a lot again. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are in the world. It is again my pleasure to participate in this conference in a virtual manner like last year. Hopefully next year we'll be meeting in person. So the topic for this presentation is designing scalable HPC, deep learning, and cloud middleware for exascale systems. So as most of us know, we are again in a very exciting phase while heading into the exaflop. If you take a very quick look, historically, like just 4 years back, we crossed 100 petaflops. Currently, we are 442 petaflops, and of course, everybody is eyeing towards the exaflop, and hopefully will be, there is a target to get it this year, but I mean, this year is almost ending, so hopefully we'll be getting an exaflop system next year. So in this context, as the technology is improving, not only InfiniBand, this new Bluefield with cloud native supercomputing kind of features, there is a lot of interesting frameworks are coming up where you not only want to just focus on HPC, but you also want to focus on deep learning, machine learning, big data. So everything is being combined now. And this is where a lot of new challenges are coming up, how we try to handle this kind of a convergence. And how do we design the software stacks so that end users can take advantage of the underlying hardware in the most beneficial manner. And also we want to take many of these things and trying to run it into also the cloud. So that also the difference between what is on-premise versus the cloud, that is also diminishing. So in this context, I'll try to share some of the very latest results, what we have in along these 4 directions. I'll start with the MPI direction, MAPIS project. Many of you are familiar. I'll briefly introduce you on that. Not only I'll give you some of the very latest results with the traditional network and GPUs, etc., but I'll also focus a lot on this accelerating application with the DP. And then I'll try to go into see how also the new generation workload like the deep learning and machine learning can also take advantage of these machines. And especially on the big data side, there is an increasing focus on using these data science applications such as Dask. And I'll let you know how we can accelerate those kind of applications. And then I'll be gradually trying to indicate that how we are trying to migrate the solutions, not only from the on-premise, but also to AWS, Azure, and we have also started working with Oracle Cloud. And then I'll provide a little bit of details on some of the work we are doing from the xScale Solutions perspective. xScale Solution is a sponsor also of this conference. That is to provide commercial support and value-added products, and then we'll conclude. So this is a very short overview of the MAPIS project. If some of you are not familiar, we started this project almost in year 2000 when InfiniBand was introduced. Prior to that, we were working on proprietary interconnects like Mirinet and Quadrix. And when InfiniBand just came in, we were the very first ones to jump into this technology. And we actually demonstrated the first open source version at Supercomputing 02. If some of you were there in that conference, almost like 19 years back, it was very hard to even to keep an 8-node system running within InfiniBand. Okay? But now you see 8,000 node systems are being easily deployed and trying to deliver high performance and scalability. So a lot of things have changed over the 20 years. We have been in this community, working with the community and trying to push the boundary above and above. And currently this software is being used by more than 3,200 organizations in 89 countries. These are registered organizations. We are hitting very close to 1.5 million downloads just from the OSU site. We also have the software available with many other software stacks like Red Hat, SUSE, OpenHPC, SPAC. We don't keep track of those counts. It's not only just the counts, but we have also been like working with the community, working with the organizations to empower many of these top 500 clusters. Here are just some samples from the June 21 ranking. So this is our broad architecture we have been working over the years. So at the very bottom, you see there are like the two pillars. One is a networking technology pillar, and the another one is the platform pillar. So networking technology, as I said, we started with InfiniBand, but over the years, like we have expanded to IWAR, Rocky, Omnipath, even the AWS Elastic Fabric Adapter. And on the platform side, I mean, we again started with x86, but as the technology have been evolving, we have solutions for open power. We had solution for GN5 that died out, ARM, NVIDIA GPUs, and also very recently AMD GPUs. I'll try to show some numbers there. So from a software design point of view, if you see these newer clusters are coming up with this kind of networking technology, they have a lot of different protocols, a lot of different features. Same thing is happening also with the platforms. So how do we take advantage of these features and then bring it into a scalable and high performance communication runtime? So this is actually our bigger challenge. We have been working almost for 20 years. And within that, you can see in any runtime, you take care of point-to-point, collectives, job startup, energy awareness, remote memory access, all these components are there. And then, of course, on the top, we want to provide the programming models interface, like for the traditional MPI, PGAS, hybrid MPI, PGAS, and not only trying to address the scientific side, but recently also we have been trying to focus on the machine learning, deep learning, and we have a very nice integration with the MPI library. I'll go into more detail. So as long as you have an MPI library installed on your system, you should be able to handle all this kind of workload. And that is actually our broad goal, and we are working on that. So once we actually in my group, the first thing is we carry out research because many of these things, as the technologies are coming, it opens up many new ideas how we can design these runtimes. And once we do that, we publish the papers, and then within 6 to 9 months, we actually take these solutions and then put it back into our libraries and then make it available to the community so people can actually take advantage of it. So this is the kind of the rough ecosystem we have been working for the almost last 20 years. So the MIP2 software, we call it as a family because sometimes when the technology very quickly move, we try to come up with a very fine solution for that domain. So as of now, we have like 3 different versions. There is a base version, there is an advanced version, and the another one is the MIP2 GDR, which is very targeted for GPU-based systems, both NVIDIA side as well as for AMD. So I'll try to highlight some of these recent features and what kind of performance you can get from these. So these are very latest, like as you know, on the compute platform side these days, the AMD Milan, that is a hot platform with 128 cores. So here we have in the latest release, MIP2 236, which we did last month. You can see the number. This is like an intran node. That means the core to core within the Milan, you can get like a almost very close to like a 180 nanosecond. We can actually do MPI to MPI communication, and then you get very good bandwidth, up to 42 gigabytes per second. Internode, this is with SDR 200. We are around on this platform. We are around like a 1.8 microsecond. And bandwidth wise, we are able to again deliver very close to the SDR 200 bandwidth. This is another sample. This is for the ARM system. It is the just like the Fugaku system, but this is with InfiniBand. This is from the Ukami system in US. So here we are comparing like MIP2X, that is our advanced version. It has more features with OpenMPI. So let's say internode latency, we're very similar. Internode latency, we have some advanced mechanisms. You can see like as the message size increases, we are able to deliver far better latency for large messages. And then for this is like a bidirectional bandwidth. We are very similar to other MPIs. And this is also with a Bcast, we are able to deliver even better performance for small messages. So those are like the point-to-point, but when you try to design like an MPI library, as you know, I mean, within MPI library, these days you have almost 400 functions. So you have to completely optimize all the different things, point-to-point, collectives, data types, So we have been doing all those functions. I'm just trying to show some highlights here. So these slides shows numbers like on the in-network computing. You might have heard of from some of the talks. Mellanox/NVIDIA has been pushing along this direction for last several years. So especially here, we have done a very tight integration and some enhancements between the MPI library and the SARP. So that is the SARP, which is the in-network computing. And these numbers have been taken from the Texas Advanced Computing Center, the Frontera system. This is one of the very largest system. You can see the numbers. So this has 7,800 nodes. So this is the complete system TAC. So this is what we are trying to do. MPI already use here with PPN1. That means only one process running on a node. So you can see this is the top line is the software approach, what we have been using. But now if you use the in-network computing, you see almost like a benefit, just like in a small message range, 8 to 2 kilobytes, you get an improvement of 5x. Similarly, the MPI barrier, you get an improvement of 9x, and here reduce, you get almost a factor of like 6x. So that shows the kind of in-networking feature. If you can do a very tight integration with the MPI library, you should be able to deliver really good performance to the application. So similarly, you can see there is a network transport protocol. If some of you know, like in the InfiniBand, we have the traditional RC, UD, but a new protocol was introduced, which is called DC, Direct Connect. So this is what we have support in the MAPIS2X. So here we are trying to show a mini application. This is from EPFL in Zurich. So here they have like this is a neuroscience mini application kernel. And if you use the DC protocol, and these experiments we are running on 9,920 cores compared to like HP MPI, you see almost improvement of 36%. If the neighbor selection is done in a random manner, or 6% if you do it in a consecutive manner. So this advanced, we already have DC support, but here we have done some optimizations, and this will be available in the upcoming version of MAPIS2X. We are planning on, might be the next week, you will see a new release coming out. But now let me spend some time on this hot new technology, which you must be hearing, called the cloud native supercomputing. So this is broadly the Bluefield adapter. Okay? The Bluefield, so it is now being called the Bluefield DPU. If you see these Bluefield DPUs are bringing more compute power to the network. So not only we have the host processors, we have also the Bluefield DPUs with ARM cores. So then the question is, how can we exploit these additional compute capabilities? Especially in the MPI middleware, I'll try to show you here. Later on, I'll try to show also we have tried to take advantage of that in the deep learning domain. So especially in the MPI, as most of you know, if you want to get the best performance and scalability, you have to deliver the best communication performance. But the other important thing is the overlap of computation and communication. If you can have a good overlap, then all your applications, you will be seeing your communication cost will gradually come down. And this is where you see the best performance and scalability. So first, what we have started is how we can actually take advantage of it in non-blocking collective communication. So I'll go into that a little bit more details in the next few slides. And if we can come up with a very good offloaded design, what will be the benefits at the application level? So that's what we have been working for the last, I think, about 6 to 9 months. So if you take a look at the Bluefield DPU, this is how it looks like. We have the host server. So this is the ConnectX-6 part. This is the traditional with RDMA InfiniBand support, but now we have this ARM cores. Okay? So the way I want to present it, think of like executives and secretaries. Okay, just like in our normal day-to-day organizations, we have any office, you have executives and you have secretaries. Now the question is, how do you divide the workload? Of course, executives can take care of everything, but then the executives are their time is very precious. So the more you can offload things to the other people, then you can actually get overlap of that computation and with communication. So that is exactly the same paradigm we are trying to take here. So in this context, we'll have the host we have, and here the ARM cores. There are 8 of these ARM cores on the current generation Bluefield DPU, what we are working on. There is also a 16 gigabyte of memory. So then the question is how we want to redesign the MPI library to take advantage of the DPU and then accelerate the scientific applications. So I'll try to go into some of the detailed designs and the performance numbers in the next few slides. So here we are working with the XScale solution, that is the commercial spin-off. So not only we have the research from the issue side, but these are actually being integrated by XScale solution, and already we have an MRAPIS to DPU library available. So that's what I'll be showing the numbers with. And this MRAPIS to DPU is based on the latest MRAPIS 2.236 version. It was released last month. The latest, this was the second release we did. And what we have done here, we have a very novel framework to offload the non-blocking collectives to the DPU, like how executives and secretaries can talk with each other. And we have, as of now, we have 3 implementations. One is for non-blocking all-to-all, MPI all-to-all, MPI all-gather, and MPI IBcast. So this product is already available. If people are interested, please feel free to contact here, and you will be able to get a trial license and try your experiments. So now let's go into a little bit of this non-blocking collective. So if you think of like all-to-all, many of you know this is a very dense collective in the MPI literature, and especially as the system size increases, network size increases, all-to-all takes a lot of time. Okay? And this is where if your application, like let's say any kind of a stencil application, any kind of 3D FFT or 2D FFT kind of application where you use all-to-all, if the communication is taking quite a lot of time, then it tries to slow down the application. And this is the context where the non-blocking all-to-all was introduced, or rather non-blocking collectives were introduced. So instead of all-to-all, I do I all-to-all. So that means what I try to do is I initiate the all-to-all, but then if I have some computation from the previous iterations to do, I try to do that and then come back and then check if the all-to-all got completed. Okay. I mean, this is a practice many times, we try to do it in also normal life. For a very simple example, like let's say you are waiting up for your friend to come before you go to a movie. Most of the time, I mean, these days everybody is busy, so you try to do your work. Okay, you are not just going into the driveway and then standing there and waiting for your friend, unless you don't have anything to do. Okay, but otherwise you typically working on your things, and if your friend comes, you get interrupted and then you proceed. So this is where we are trying to see overlap of computation with communication or overlap with work with another task. And that is the whole idea of trying to speed up this non-blocking all-to-all. So then the question comes, in this case, I have the host and I have the ARM cores. Can the ARM cores try to take care of the all-to-all while the hosts can proceed with the computation? So in that context, the question comes, how much overlap can we achieve? So we have these OISU micro benchmarks. Many of you might be familiar. For many years, we have these micro benchmarks which tries to measure these kind of things. It tries to give you what kind of overlap you can get. So we use the standard micro benchmarks. And here what we are trying to show for different message sizes. So here it's a 32 nodes, 16 ppn. And in this case, 32 nodes, 32 ppn. So it is a 1000 process run, and this is a 512 process runs. So now you can see the way the protocols are designed, especially for large messages. If you see, the basic MRAPIS2 doesn't provide a lot of overlap because the processor is continuously pooling or trying to take care of the rendezvous transfer, waiting for messages to come. Whereas if we do an intelligent design with the MRAPIS2 DPU, we are trying to offload that. Okay, so that means the processor is no longer trying to take care of the communication, let the ARM cores take care of the communication, and the host processor is actually free to do any kind of additional operation. So this is what we see the overlap. So if the overlap is higher, so that means I can actually reduce my communication cost, provided I try to take care of the computation while the communication is going on. So in this case, you can see almost we get 100% overlap. So then the question is, now let's try to see if I initiate an all-to-all and do the computation, okay? And together, how much time does it take, okay? So that's what we are trying to show in the basic MRAPIS2. As you will see that as the message size increases, this is the red bar, the time will keep on increasing because you will not get any overlap. Okay? So that means I'm trying to do I do the communication, but then to progress the communication, the host is being interrupted, so I'm not getting any overlap, and then I am trying to do the computation. Okay? On the other hand, with the DPU, since I'm able to offload, if you take this total execution time, so that is the main thing, total execution time, which is compute plus communication, now you see the benefit, okay? And that's what exactly happens. The executive secretary concept, like executive might be trying to schedule a big meeting. The secretary is trying to contact everybody, trying to decide on a common time. So the executive is not spending time there, and then executive can do his or her work. So if you combine that work plus setting up the conference call time, then you will see with the executive and secretary model, the time will be shorter compared to what if the executive alone would have done. So that is the exact paradigm we are trying to bring it here. And now you can see this I all to all, as the system size increases, we are able to get almost 22%, 17% kind of benefits in the overall execution time. So this is at the micro benchmark level. So then we work with this P3D-FFT application developers. So this is an application from San Diego Supercomputing Center researchers. So here the thing is, to get this kind of overlap, the application needs to be co-designed or modified. Okay, so if you just have an application which is using I all to all and try to run it, all to all, and then convert that into I all to all, you may not see the benefit. So we actually work with this developer, and he rearranged the code so that earlier he was just doing computation, communication, but now he initiates there is a computation, he initiates the communication, but he also tries to do some part of the computation while the all-to-all I all-to-all is progressing. So then we can exploit the overlap. And now you can see this at an application level. This is 32 nodes again. This is 512 processors. And here is 1,000 processes. So now you can see at an application level, we are able to get this is like a 3D. So here we are showing 1K by 1K, 1K by 1K by 2K. So like this, we went up to 2K by 2K by 4K. And here we are able to get almost 18%, 16%, 21% benefit. So now you can see just the DPU technology itself, depending on your system size and application size, you will be able to speed up your application, overall application time in this manner. So we are actually working with some other application developers. If you have these kind of applications, we'll be very happy to work with you and then try to see how much benefits can be exploited. So that is just for one collective like I all to all. So gradually we have started expanding. The MPI has a lot of other collectives. So the other one we have implemented is I all gather. So here again, just at an OMB level or OSU micro benchmark level, you see almost for large message sizes, we get almost 41%, 48% benefits. And similarly, we have done for a IBcast, which is non-blocking broadcast. So here again, even it increases, up to 59%, 58% benefits we see. So these are at the OSU micro benchmark level. So now we're actually trying to looking for good application. So we want to actually collaborate with some of the application developers. If you have these kind of applications where you are using non-blocking Bcast, AllGather, or any of the non-blocking collectives, and you will be able to, you have freedom to redesign the application, we can actually try to work with you and then trying to demonstrate how much benefit you can get with the newer technology. So I believe there is a question here. Let me see. Okay, so just thanks comment. Any experiment results you have in Intel IPU? Unfortunately, no, I don't have even any access to Intel IPU. So we have not done any work, but if you can provide us access to those kind of environments, we'll be very happy to work with you. Thank you. So let me then move. This is like the DPU things. Now, if you come back to the traditional GPU, so that technology is also evolving. So this is where, like several years back, some of you would have heard of, we did this GPU Direct RDMA or a GDR, we call it. So because the GPU is sitting next to the network adapter, we can actually try to do direct communication between the host and the GPU data directly go to the network adapter instead of going back to the host. So we worked very closely with NVIDIA and Mellanox at that time. We had a classic paper at ISC 12. And after that, a lot of people have started gradually moving into this newer technology, not only in the MPI side, but also in the other domains like the deep learning, machine learning. So if you see here, this is an x86 platform. Look at this number, 1.85 microsecond. So this is like a GPU to GPU internode latency. So that means I have a GPU on one node, GPU on another node, and I'm able to do the data transfer over InfiniBand with 1.85 microsecond. Again, this depends on the platform. On this platform, the basic InfiniBand latency is around 1 microsecond. With another 800 nanoseconds, we are able to transfer the data. Okay? Here, of course, we also use a library from NVIDIA, the GDR copy 2. That's the latest version. So combining all these things, we can get like almost 1.85 microsecond here, and that gives a very big benefit to bandwidth and bidirectional bandwidth. So this is the very latest release. What we have done, not only we have provided in our MLAPIS2 GDR, so that is our optimized library for GPUs. We have brought even the AMD GPU into that ecosystem. So this is the ROCm hour design. So here we are comparing with some of the numbers, MLAPIS2 GDR, the latest version with OpenMPI, the latest one with UCX thing. This is running on there is a Corona cluster at Lawrence Livermore National Lab. So here you can see internode on this platform, we are able to GPU to GPU. In this case, we are able to, this is intranode. We have 1.75 microsecond here. Internode is like a 3.99 microsecond. Okay? And as you can see, this is just a point to point. Now we can take that knowledge and then try to optimize the collective. So here we see an all reduced 64 GPUs. We do perform very significantly better than OpenMPI version. You can see we remain almost like a flat here as the message size increases. The Bcast also similar kind of trend. Again, this is available with the very latest release, MLAPIS2 GDR 236. If you have any GPU clusters with InfiniBand, you should be able to exactly get similar kind of numbers. And we had a detailed paper. A lot of these slides have at the footnote. These are our research papers. If you would like to take a look at more details, please feel free to take a look at this. So those are like the point-to-point communication. Very recently, we have introduced a novel concept of on-the-fly compression. Okay? So here the idea is that the GPU has a lot of computing cores, and you can take advantage of that even for communication. And in this case, we are saying on-the-fly compression. So that means if I have let's say 2 megabytes of data to send, should I send the 2 megabyte data using all the latest like the GPU Direct RDMA, or I can use some of the cores within the GPU to compress it, to reduce the size, and then send it, and the other side we decompress. Okay? So now the question is, if my compression plus transmission and decompression time, if it will be better than the original time, then I'll win. Okay? And that's what we have done here. This paper was a best paper finalist at IPDPS conference this year. So it again depends on the data. And the communication pattern, you may be able to compress or you may not be able to compress. But here, we are able to actually work with AWP ODC. This is a seismic simulation, the earthquake simulation from San Diego Supercomputing Center and USC. So we are able to run that with compression. Okay? And this was running on up to, here you can see 512 GPUs at the Lawrence Livermore National Lab, the LASM cluster. So there are different compression algorithms. This is the baseline where you don't do any compression. Then we have some different kinds of compression. And here we are able to see, this is the final one, the GFP, with some optimizations, we are able to get significant benefit here with like up to 18% in the computing petaflops, and then the overall execution time, like the time for time steps, we are able to reduce by 15%. So that means in a realistic manner, now you can actually take advantage of this compression and the GPU computing power to speed up your applications. So these are some of the very latest things we are doing. As you know, the NVIDIA has the DGX systems with Ampere. So here we have some of the initial numbers, the collectives. We have been optimizing collectives on this platform. This is also has a multi-rail configuration. So it has not only more number of GPUs, it also has more number of network adapters. So how do you really balance out the entire communication path with multiple GPUs, multiple adapters? So here we are showing some numbers with the MIPS to GDR, again, the latest number, and the nickel, that is also the latest version. And compared to that, compared to nickel, we are able to, in all these collectives, we are able to speed up. So if your applications are trying to take advantage of these, you'll be able to see some benefits, and that's what we, in the next phase, we are working on, and might be in few months, we'll be very happy to share those kind of numbers. So this is another example how people are trying to take advantage of our library to get the best benefit. This is from a talk. If some of you are familiar, last month we did our MIPS user group conference. That's the annual conference we do. So I'm taking some numbers here. You can actually go into that. We had a very 3 days of event. A lot of exciting presentations were there. You can take a look at the slides and videos. So here especially there is a new library which is being developed from University of Tennessee together with some of the OCRIS collaborators. So they call it HEFFT library. So this was run on the OCRIS Summit system. So here you can see, like, compared to the 3 libraries, they compared Spectrum MPI, MIPS, and OpenMPI UCX. And MIPS to GDR is giving very high bandwidth. As you can see across the message size, it is able to give very good bandwidth. And at then HEFFT library, they are able to get almost 10 to 20% faster compared to the Spectrum MPI. So we are working with them even to, like, for this larger configuration, trying to enhance the performance better. And this was another presentation from the MUG. This is from the Idaho National Lab. So there is a big consortium of people, the nuclear energy simulation at the Idaho National Lab. So they've been working with the MIPS2 library. This actually came, all these results were available in a special issue of a journal. They're using this MOOS and PETSI, and they have done the tight integration with MIPS2 GDR, and we actually worked with them. In fact, they use PBS Pro. So we had a very tight integration. So with this, they're able to get very good performance with MIPS2 library. So that is their default library for all their nuclear energy simulation. So please feel free to take a look at this presentation for more details. So let me see, there is another question from Alberto Francisco. What is the reason behind the latency measurements depending on the message size in practice? If I can understand your question, you see, people write applications. Again, there are strong scaling applications, weak scaling applications. The message sizes completely vary. That is a big area. People have been working, not just now, but for last 20 to 30 years. As the technology is changing, people are coming up with different algorithms. For some of the application, traditional application, short messages used to be the norm. But these days, with especially the deep learning applications, the things have shifted. A lot of messages, we see large messages. And in fact, that's what I'll try to show in the next section, especially for the machine learning, deep learning. Instead of, let's say, doing an all reduce on 8 bytes, now they are trying to do it in 8 megabytes. Even sometimes even can go to 100 megabytes or even 1 gigabyte. So all these collectives, point-to-point communication protocols, you need to rethink now with the next generation workload, how we can take advantage of those at the lower layer so that the applications can take advantage of it. So let me move to the next section. This is the high performance deep learning. So here, what we have tried to do, as I said earlier, people have all, like, this field is evolving. If some of you know, like a few years back, Horovod, they had their Horovod stack. Now there is a cost distributed, deep speed. A lot of these newer frameworks are coming, or rather middlewares are coming. And of course, the frameworks started with TensorFlow, MXNet, but now PyTorch is trying to gain momentum. So instead of trying to have different kind of solution, what we have done is we have done a tight integration, and this is the Horovod came up with that idea, and we have taken it further. Have an MPI integration. Okay. So Horobot typically has you can directly utilize nickel or you can use MPI. So within MPI, what we have done is we have taken like a two approach. Our MAPIS2 or MAPIS2X was CPU-based training, and our MAPIS2 GPU Direct RDMA for GPU-based training. Okay, and we have actually a new project we started almost 5 years back. It's called High Performance DL or Deep Learning HIDL. So if you go there, we have a very detailed user guide. If you are totally new to this area, you should be able to just download our MAPIS2 library, download the PyTorch, Horobot, and you should be able to entirely build this entire chain so that if you have an MAPIS library, or in this case MAPIS2, but you can also use other MPI libraries, and you don't need any other things. Okay, with an MPI library, you should be able to allow your users to utilize TensorFlow, PyTorch, or any of these frameworks, and they should be able to get the performance and scalability. So that's what I'll try to illustrate in some of the next few slides. So I'll start with the basic data parallelism, what people have been using for last several years. But as you know, the model sizes are increasing, data sizes are increasing. So this is where a lot of research is happening with respect to model parallelism, or in fact, hybrid parallelism. So I'll try to illustrate some of these examples, and then we have been working on a very concrete user case, an AI-driven digital pathology. I'll try to show how this field can help that community, and I'll also be touching a little bit about the QML. These are the machine learning applications. So using this combined framework, so let me start here. So this is just the CPU-based training. Okay, so what we did is this is exactly like with the Horobot, distributed TensorFlow with Horobot, and we linked our MAPIS2X library here. And as you can see, these numbers are taken on the PAC Frontera system up to 2K nodes. Combined is 114,000 cores. Okay? And as you can see here, this is like a very straight lines. We get like a you get on 2K nodes. We were able to train ResNet 15 in just 7 minutes. And we are able to get a peak of like a 260,000 images per second. So it shows if you have access to very large CPU-based system, you can also try to utilize that for your training. It doesn't have to be only GPU. This is the other result from the actually GPU-based training. So this is what we ran it on the Oakridge Summit system. So here again, you can see we had an ImageNet 1K. It has 1.2 million images. And using our MAPIS2 GDR, we were able to scale, in this case, of 1536 GPUs. This is comparing a little bit older version at that time, GDR 234 with Nickel 2.6. And here, again, we are able to train this entire thing in 4.5 minutes. Of course, GPUs are powerful, and we are using 1500 GPUs. We are able to achieve it much more faster. So we have taken the same framework, as I said, tight integration with the MPI libraries, and here we have done comparison with Livermore Larsen system with 256 voltage GPUs, comparing this torch distributed or Horobot or DeepSpeed. What we are trying to show images per second, and then which communication backend is used. So this is a Nickel 2.7 in this case, and our MAPIS2 GDR. And if you do a comparison, you will see almost compared to the Nickel-based training, we are able to get almost 10,000 images per second faster. Okay? So what it shows that, the MPI libraries, have been there. They have been working on these collectives for many years. So as long as you optimize the MPI library, you should be able to deliver not only benefits to the traditional scientific application, but you also should be able to deliver performance to the deep learning users. So that is with the traditional data parallelism. But now what is happening, as you know, the data parallel training has limits. So here we are trying to show a chart here. If you see that, like the input image sizes keeps on increasing, and how much memory you have, like within a GPU, let's say Pascal, Volta, this is even the CPU. So this reason, if you see, data parallelism cannot work. So you need to go to the model parallelism. But then the model parallelism, there is always a challenge. How do you actually cut down on your synchronization overhead? Otherwise, you will not see benefits. So that's what we have been working here. We introduced a new model here called hybrid parallelism. We had a paper at IAC 2020. And now you can see this is the first CPU-based results I'm trying to show. This is again taken on the TAC Frontera. On 512 nodes, we're able to get almost like a 481 speed up, 81x speed up. And almost, if you see the efficiency, we're able to scale like 98% up to 256 nodes and 93.9% for 512 nodes. And that this hybrid framework, the model parallelism, we have been continuously expanding on these. So here we have introduced some new techniques. It's called James, and this paper was actually presented at SC 2020. I'll try to show some numbers later on. Here again, we are trying to see like a almost 97% efficiency on 1K nodes. And that is for the traditional one. I'll try to show the pathology example with that. But now we have moved ahead. We call it a subgraph parallelism. Okay? So what is subgraph parallelism? So if you think of here, like this is a multi-branch DNN architecture. You have starting with one layer, it goes to a lot of 9 other layers and then converts to the layer 10. Now the question is, if you have 4 GPUs, how do I distribute this? Okay, because there will be, depending on how I partition it, there will be a lot of communication, and that's what this subgraph parallelism, we call it super. So we have done this work together with Lawrence Livermore National Lab. It was presented at IPDPS, and if you use this new subgraph parallelism, here we have taken the transformer model, and now if you try to see with up to 1,000 GPUs, we can give you like almost 3x speed up in the training, okay, compared to the basic data parallelism, where you can see here we are able to improve by a factor of 3. So this is where like continuously we are pushing the frontier of the parallelism and trying to see how with the very latest GPU architectures and the topologies, we want to make changes to the hybrid parallelism solutions so that they can be put together to give the best training solutions. Now, let me go into a very concrete case. This is where we are working with our pathologist at OSU. So if you take a look at like a traditional pathology image, just like we go to the doctors, the pathologist actually try to see it in a big zoom. So in this case, if you take a very small piece and then expand it with the zoom, you get a lot of insights. Of course, these are the pathologists are trained for that, but they are also very expensive. So the question is now, can deep learning be used here? And especially for these whole slide images. Okay, these whole slide images, when you, in a very fine resolution, this comes to like 100,000 by 100,000 pixels. So they cannot fit into a single GPU memory. Traditionally, in the deep learning, they have been trying to do it in tiles. But once you do it in the tiles, you lose a lot of information in these boundaries. So this is where, in fact, they were trying to do the training. It was taking quite a lot of time for them. Even just one GPU, it was taking 32 hours. We worked with them, and gradually, over a 6 months period, we reduced their time. This was like a 1 node 4 GPUs. With 1 GPU, it was taking 32 hours. So we almost reduced to 0.46 hours. So we are able to deliver them like an overall 15x reduction in the training time, and also their throughput increase. So that shows a very concrete scenario how computer scientists like us can actually work with the application people to really take the deep learning, machine learning into practice. So that is the user case. So now let me go into the machine learning domain. Here again, some of you might be familiar with the QML. This is the infrastructure which is being pushed for a lot of machine learning applications. Under the hood, again, it utilizes a lot of collectives. So here what we have done, this QML environment was running with Nickel. So we have introduced an API for Pi module, and then which directly links to the MapReduce2 GDR. So using this MapReduce2 library, again, you can actually try to handle the machine learning application. We had a release here. You can go to the IDL page, and you will be able to directly download these, and then you should be able to run it together with our MapReduce2 GDR for all your machine learning application. And here, I'm just trying to show some numbers here. You can see these are like k-means, nearest neighbors, truncated SVD. We are comparing as the number of GPUs increase. We are comparing the MapReduce2 GDR performance with the Nickel. And again, you can see these are the time. So the lower is better. So we are able to give almost like a factor of 1.6, 1.4 benefits compared to the traditional Nickel-based solutions. So then let me change the gear a little bit to the big data things, especially in the big data. If some of you know, we did a lot of work on Hadoop, Spark, all those stacks earlier, but now the user community is changing. There is a lot of focus on this Dask architecture, so we have started working along that direction. So here again, the Dask, there are two kind of solutions were available, one with the standard TCP or it is going through the UCX. We introduced this API for Dask and API for Pi. Again, that tries to provide a link to our MFS2 GDR library. We have made 2 releases. Dask 0.2 was released in March 21. Now it has both support for CPU as well as GPUs. And if you take a look at some of the examples, like here is a benchmark one. It's a transpose application. These are the standard benchmarks in the Dask literature. As you can see, as the number of Dask workers increases compared to the IP over IP solution or UCX solution, we are able to deliver in fact 3.47x better performance, or even here in the 6.92x better. This is a second kind of benchmark, CUDF, and we get around 2.91x better and 2.9x better. Again, these solutions are available. If any one of you are using Dask, either for CPUs or DPU, please feel free to use our MPI for Dask release, and you should be able to again boost the performance of your applications. Now, I mentioned about the GPU compression earlier. The GPU compression also comes handy in the Dask, especially when you are sending very large messages. So again, in the same paper, I am taking the number from the IPDPS best paper finalist paper. If you have a data science framework like Dask, here again, we are able to show that the overall throughput you can improve by a factor of 1.56x or reduce the execution time by 37%. So these are all the solutions which are available to the on-premise side, the traditional HPC environment. Now let me spend a little bit of a few minutes on how we are trying to migrate the solutions to the public cloud. So here we have been working with both AWS and Azure for some time, and recently we have started also working with Oracle Cloud. So if you take a look at MFS to Azure, so especially Azure, if you know, like they directly use InfiniBand. Okay? Of course, they have the virtualization support. So we have been working closely with them. So every time we make a release MFS2, they actually take it, and earlier we had a separate release from our site. But now it has been integrated into their HPC images. So if you go to this, if you have an account on the Azure HPC environment, you should be able to directly utilize. We already have an image, the 236 is included here. So here I'm trying to show some numbers on their latest AMD ND A100 instance. So this is the AMD platform together with the A100 with multiple of GPUs. And here I'm trying to show the MFS2 GDR that directly works on that platform. You get very good intranode, the same bandwidth. You can see almost 133 gigabytes per second intranode, like the GPUs to GPUs within the node. And across, of course, you get the SDR performance here, and also the latency as I had shown earlier. So directly this kind of solution, whatever we have done, get translated to the Azure cloud very easily. This is trying to show another results on the Azure. This the WRF, which is a common application runs on the cloud. So here we are comparing the basic MFS2 and then MFS2X with the XPMEM support. So that is a module which accelerates the intranode communication. And again, as you can see, with the MFS2 XPMEM, you try to even get higher performance. Now with the AWS, the story is a little bit different. As many of you know, they don't use InfiniBand, but they have their own adapter called EFA, Elastic Fabric Adapter. But they have a lot of concepts taken from the IB side. They have RDMA support. So we have actually worked with them. We have a native design for the EFA. We don't go through libfabrics or anything. Directly we work just like on the InfiniBand bursts we work. So in the similarly EFA, directly we work. They have a mechanism called a transport protocol called SRD, Scalable Reliable Datagram. We take advantage of that. So here are some of the numbers. You can see this is the same WRF. We are comparing with OpenMPI, Intel MPI, and this is our native design. And as you can see, that's the number of processes increases. MFS2X AWS is able to actually deliver far better performance and scalability compared to the other libraries. So this MFS2X AWS version is available from our MFS site. You should be able to download and then use it directly. So now we are working with them on their latest ARM instance. This is where Gravitron, they call it. So this is where they want to move in a bigger manner. So we have an initial version already running there. This is the MFS2X. We are comparing with OpenMPI, trying to show some sample numbers here for collectives. This is on their this C6GN 18X large instances. And as you can see, we are able to deliver far better performance at the collective levels, and any of the applications which take advantage of these collectives should be able to get better performance. So this is the direction we are working with the Oracle Cloud. They actually go through the Rocky approach. So all these three cloud providers are going through different kinds of networking solution. And since our MFS2 libraries not only supports InfiniBand, but also Rocky, our solutions can directly work on those platforms. Of course, some of the platforms need additional optimizations and tuning, and that's what we have been working with Oracle Cloud. We have actually delivered a version to them. They are doing some internal testing, and soon you will be seeing a release from our site or from their site to use MFS2 on their platform. And again, these are some sample numbers, the Bcast and reduce, comparing with HPC-X and Intel MPI. As you can see, we are able to deliver very good performance here in Bcast, reduce in a much more bigger manner. So with this, let me move to the final part of the talk. So all these research solutions are already available from the OSU side, from the MFS or IDL or IBD side. But over the years, we have received a lot of requests to provide like a commercial support, so that it can be just a supported software with additional optimizations, platform-specific tuning. So this is how we had this new commercial startup performed 4 years back. Expert Solution, as I indicated, Expert Solution is also a sponsor of this conference. So through this, actually now we are able to provide commercial support to national laboratories and International Supercomputing Center. So this is just like any other software stack. Instead of a best effort manner, this has like a time delivery, just like any other service level agreement we can have with the end users and trying to take care of their entire ecosystem. For example, we work with Lawrence Livermore National Lab. We take care of their entire user space. Any issues comes with the MFS2 library, optimization, scalability, we try to take care of that through this approach. So their end users are very happy and trying to get better and better performance on all the latest platforms. So while we are working on the basic commercial support, we are also getting a lot of requests for value-added products, and this is where we are trying to focus on this side. I talked a little bit about this MFS2 DPU earlier. I'll talk a little bit more, but we already have like introduced 2 packages. I'll go into that a little bit detail. So this is like the XL HPC package. This is based on MFS2 libraries, but these are very fine-tuned and for all different kind of configuration, x86, OpenPower, AMD with InfiniBand, Rocky. So these are like out of the box. So one should be able to directly download and utilize that to get the best performance together with the commercial support. On the AI side, I indicated earlier, like we have provided this MFS2 driven solution. You can try to build it yourself, but here we have actually everything together. There's an integrated stack, just in one click. You should be able to download. You don't have to spend like several days to bring all the different versions together to work. But in addition to that, we have a very nice thing which is not available in any other software stack. We have a very novel thing called deep introspect. Okay, I'll show that in the next slide. Especially when you are running, let's say on the deep learning application, how do you know that you are getting the best performance? Okay, of course, I mean you can spend a lot of time, try to do a lot of print statements, go through a lot of different profiler, and then see whether you get best performance or where there are bottlenecks. Here we have developed a very nice dashboard. Together with it goes to the InfiniBand layer, starting from let's say your end applications to TensorFlow, to going to the MPI library or NICL, and then going even to the InfiniBand, it provides the complete picture. Okay, and it becomes very helpful for the end user, for the system administrators to very quickly find out in a visual manner where the bottleneck lies. For example, here, let's say you are running it. This is on a 8 voltage. You are running MPI order use. As you can see, for different message sizes, how the latency is coming. So as you can see, like for some, let's say this message size, this message size, this message size, there are some issues. Okay, so that means the stacks are not optimized. And if especially your application or forward layer or PyTorch layer is using those message sizes, you are not getting good performance. The second thing, it tells already calls by message sizes. Okay, you can see here, it shows like for this application, this is the message size, which is very heavily used. So that means one has to really make sure that this collective is really optimized for that message size or here or here. And very quickly, these are you get the bottlenecks in a visual manner, and then you optimize and then do the second run, and then you will get very good performance. So this is very important tool, not only for on-premise system or also for the cloud, to make sure that you are effectively utilizing the system. And this is what is being integrated into the Excel AI product. So the other thing which we are working on, I indicated to you earlier, the Bluefield 2 DPUs. On a research side, from the OSU, we have done deep learning. How do you take a deep learning, CPU-based deep learning, and try to utilize the NVIDIA Bluefield DPU? So we had a paper at the Hot Interconnect. So here we saw up to 14% performance improvement in the DL training time compared to if you don't do the offloading versus you do uploading, you can boost the performance by 14%. So here it shows the numbers. These are all the different designs, like this is a no offload. But here, if you see, this is one of the design. Here you can see almost like a 14% improvement. So this has been, these results, this study has been done from the OSU side, but now we are taking it from the Excel solution side. You will see in our next release, this will be available. So now the Bluefield DPUs, you can also utilize it for accelerating your deep learning applications. So with this, let me conclude. So at a very high level, if you take a look, we are in a very exciting era, moving with the exascale systems, the cloud. But to design the software environment for these systems, we need to take a holistic view because the workloads are changing. It is no longer the traditional HPC, but HPC, big data, deep machine learning, and people sometimes have the workflow jumping from one to other also. And this is where I try to show an overview of the challenges and how we can take advantage of the underlying features of the platform-specific things and GPU, DPU, as well as networking to get the best performance and provided some solutions. And this will help us. This kind of solutions will help us to move to the next generation exascale, not only exascale, but very soon people have started talking about zetascale systems. And this is where we want to be in few years. So with this, I'd like to thank all our sponsors. With many of them, we have been working almost for the last 20 years, together with funding and equipment support. That's how we are able to bring all these solutions to the community. But last but not the least, these are all my heroes. What I presented in the last 50 minutes is a work of 20 years by many students, staffs. So in every presentation, I'd like to salute them and recognize their contributions. With saying that, I just want to, since it's being presented in Australia, I would just want to say we're always looking for very bright and enthusiastic personnel to join, both from the OSU side as well as from the Excel solution side. If you are interested coming and working with us, please feel free to send me a note. With this, let me stop here. These are all my web pointers, and I'll be very happy to take any additional questions anybody can have.
Thank you, DK. Another excellent presentation. Really appreciate everything you throw into each of our conferences. You did a great job. You did my job by taking all these questions during your session, and it was great. It was in line with everything you were going over, which was quite a lot.